Dr. Gary Locklair is a professor and chair of computer science at Concordia University Wisconsin, where he has served for almost 30 years. Prior to that, he worked in the computer industry, most recently at Hewlett-Packard, where he was a laserjet printer program manager. He and his wife Karen have 5 kids, all of whom are CUW graduates. They've been blessed with 7 grandchildren and enjoy living on a small hobby farm, caring for rescue animals and viewing God's creation. They restored a 1990 ZR1 Corvette that they enjoy driving for pleasure. To quote, "I love teaching at CUW. I want to teach at a school where I can integrate my Christian worldview into the classroom. Teaching is about passion. You must love what you do, and you must communicate that passion, that excitement, to others." Without further ado, Dr. Gary Locklair.
Thank you, Joshua. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate having an audience to talk to. I would just talk by myself, but it's so much better when there are people here. And Joshua's a student of mine, and he does really well in class until he mentioned how long I've been here. And suddenly his grade is taking a big dive. But I appreciate him not reading all the things I have never accomplished. That list is almost endless. I have not won a Nobel Prize. I have not been awarded a Congressional Medal of Honor. I have not won an Emmy. Whew. When you think about it, I wonder why in the world did they ask me to speak at all? So when I asked Dr. Manoj, why did you ask me to speak at this conference? He said, "You're going to make all the other presenters look really good." So thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. I want to take a page out of one of my mentors' book, Dr. John Saleska. Dr. Saleska would always begin with a devotional prayer that was actually the words of a hymn. So let me read to you this hymn from Bernard of Clairvaux. Maybe you know it. "O Jesus, King most wonderful, thou conqueror renowned, O source of peace ineffable, in whom all joys are found. When once you visit darkened hearts, the truth begins to shine. Then earthly vanity departs, then kindles love divine." Here's a Chuck Norris fact. There is no control key on Chuck Norris' computer. Chuck Norris is always in control. It's okay, you can laugh. That's okay. I like that little ditty, but it relates to technology. And I sometimes wonder, are we really in control? You know that old adage you've probably heard when people talk about computers or technology. Computers only do what somebody programmed or told them to do. That is not true. That little ditty has never been true. And it's certainly not true in the 21st century with artificial intelligence. So, are we in control? Rather than just benign tools, is technology designed to manipulate us? You know what? It is. Technology is not just a benign tool. It has actually been purposefully designed to manipulate us. If you've been paying attention to the news about the founders of social media over the last 6 months or so, you've noticed a remarkable admission. This is the former vice president of Facebook. He's been making waves speaking out about his, quote, tremendous guilt over growing the social network, Facebook, which he feels has eroded the core foundations of how people behave by and between each other. In the beginning, he says there was not much thought given to the long-term negative consequences of developing such a platform as Facebook. I think in the back, deep resources of our minds, we kind of knew something bad could happen, like dopamine-driven feedback loops. This is the first president of Facebook, Shawn Parker. God only knows what it's doing to our children's brains. which with each like and comment, Facebook is exploiting psychology on purpose to keep users hooked on a social validation feedback loop. It is exactly the kind of thing that a hacker like myself would come up with. In 2014, there was a study done actually with the knowledge of Facebook, taking a look on when technology manipulates our emotions. Emotional contagion in social media. In other words, Facebook purposely fed some people more positive, what they consider happy and positive feeds, and watched what they did. It fed other people negative down feeds and see what happened. Not surprisingly, there was an emotional contagion. This, interestingly, was done for 600,000 Facebook users without their knowledge. It caused, as you can imagine, quite a stir. So, question, is technology neutral? At one time I would have told you, you know, technology, a computer, that's just a neutral tool. It's sort of like a hammer. It could be used for a good purpose, it could be used for a bad purpose. But technology, I thought at one time, was really just neutral. I don't believe that. If technology is created by human beings, and if technology, if you come at this as I do from a Christian creationary worldview perspective, if technology reflects an image of its human creators, then technology is certainly not a neutral tool. Does anybody else agree with me? This was one of many headlines recently. Technology is not neutral. Say Silicon Valley. You know Silicon Valley, that's where lots of technology is created. Say Silicon Valley founders. Online companies manipulate billions of minds every day. Is technology neutral? Regardless of whether you think technology is neutral or not, human nature certainly is not. People are not neutral. People are both good and bad, saint and sinner. Maybe I can't speak for you, although I think I can, but I could just speak for myself. I am simultaneously good and bad, saint and sinner. Interestingly, with that though, our creations do reflect our image. What we end up creating, whether that's technology or anything else, does reflect some aspect of our soul. J.R.R. Tolkien said, we are sub-creators. We can create, not in the same sense that God did, but we can create mental images and things. So, what is computer ethics? This presentation is supposed to be ethics and technology, and even more so than just ethics, biblical ethics. What is computer ethics, and how does the idea of ethics relate to technology? By the way, do we need something special here? Do we need such a thing as computer ethics? Could we get by with what we might call routine ethics? I mean, after all, isn't ethics ethics? Do we need something special just because we're dealing with technology? Well, let me read to you what two computer ethicists have said. This is Deborah Johnson. Computer ethics studies the ways in which computers pose new versions of standard moral problems and new ways of exasperating moral dilemmas, exasperating the old problems and forcing us to apply ordinary moral norms in uncharted realms. James Moore indicated that computer ethics is revolutionary because computers are different. In his words, they are logically malleable. I'll come back and try to flesh that out. So, do we really need such a thing as computer ethics? I think so. What are the origins of this idea of computer ethics? This is Professor Norbert Wiener, who invented or created a field that he called cybernetics, even before we thought about such things as technology and computer science. Professor Wiener was working during World War II. He's credited with starting the thinking of computer ethics. He predicted after the war the world would undergo a second industrial revolution, what he called an automatic age. This is the age of technology, with, in his words, enormous potential for good and for evil that would generate a staggering number of new ethical challenges. I think he was quite prophetic there. But computer ethics absolutely needs to be based upon the concept of ethics. I am hardly in a position, as some of the others at this conference are, to tell you much about ethics. So I'm going to rely on an expert witness, Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Ethics oftentimes is defined as that branch of philosophy trying to understand how we ought to live. Oftentimes you've heard people say, well, ethics is about right and wrong, what's good and bad, determining good and bad, right and wrong. Dietrich Bonhoeffer did not think so. Dietrich Bonhoeffer claimed, while the knowledge of good and evil appears to be the goal of all ethics, Christian ethics has as its first task to overthrow this knowledge. Mankind in his origin knows only one, God. Now what's Bonhoeffer saying? To put it another way, what Bonhoeffer is saying is the goal of ethics is not the knowledge of good and evil, but the knowledge of good. The problem is, when we try to understand good and evil, we want to determine good and evil. For us as human beings, to know good and evil is to want to decide what is right and wrong, good and bad. To know good and evil is to know something other than the good, which is what we knew originally at the creation, and thereby to have some kind of choice and distinguish and choose. I think I'll do this, or I think I'll do that. Why is ethics a critical aspect of technology? I think there are two important reasons I'd like you to consider and roll around in your mind. Why is ethics a critical aspect of technology? The first reason is because technology amplifies. Technology amplifies human ideas, human thoughts, human emotions, human actions. Consider a simple example. 100 years ago, if you had a piece of juicy gossip that our human nature says, ooh, I don't know if this is true or not, or maybe I know it's not true, but I'd really like to tell. You go find somebody and tell them, hey, did you hear about this? And when you're doing that, you are talking over the fence, or maybe you're on the telephone to one other person, and maybe they share it with somebody else, and maybe after a while, a dozen people know it. What about today, in the second decade of the 21st century? You got a piece of salacious gossip? How many people know about it? One tweet. How many people does that reach? A couple billion? Technology amplifies human thoughts, ideas, emotions, and actions. It's a very unusual circumstance. Why do we need to think about ethics in the context of technology. Secondly, because technology is informational. It's a completely different type of tool. We're used to lots of different kinds of tools. Technology is informational in nature. I used that term logically malleable before by James Moore. He didn't make it up. All computer scientists understand what that means. A computer can be anything you want it to be. A computer can do anything you want it to do, limited only by your imagination in an informational context. We experience this all the time. Your computer does many different tasks or jobs. 1 minute you're using a word processor, the next minute you're using a spreadsheet, the next minute you're using a web browser, the next minute you're using an email client. That same computer does many different informational tasks. That's part of its inherent design and its inherent nature. So, if technology is both an amplification device and informational nature, ethics is extremely important. And fundamentally, why can technology be either good or bad? It has to do with the attitude of the user's heart. It has to do with the attitude of the creator when she was thinking about making this device. It has to do with the attitude of the user as she's employing this device. No good tree bears bad fruit, nor does a bad tree bear good fruit. Each tree is recognized by its own fruit. People do not pick figs from thorn bushes or grapes from briars. A good man brings good things out of the good stored up in his heart, and an evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in his heart. For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. I like the way the ESV, that was the NIV, I like the way the ESV puts that last verse. The good person out of the good treasure of his heart produces good, and the evil person out of the evil treasure produces evil. For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Can technology be both good and bad? You know the answer. I'm always surprised when even materialists, naturalists, secularists get dismayed by video games. If you don't play GTA, that's good. That's good. If you don't know what Doom is, that's good. There was a recent article entitled 5 Video Games That Pose and Reward Awful Moral Choices. I don't think I'll read all these to you. But Dishonored, which is a video game, rewards you for kidnapping women and giving them to a stalker. Silent Hill 3 condemns you if you forgive somebody. And the list gets worse from there. Does this seem like evil fruit growing out of the abundance of evil in somebody's heart? Absolutely. You can claim, well, it's just how people... Yeah, this is bad. Can technology be used for good? The answer is absolutely. We have examples of that also. My favorite example of technology being used for good purposes is adaptive, assistive technology. Here on the left you see an exoskeleton developed by the Honda Corporation. Someone who's paralyzed can strap this on, and using a BMI, a brain-machine interface, can actually think about walking, and the exoskeleton will respond, allowing the individual to walk. You're probably familiar with other technologies that allow people with severe disabilities to interact. These are great, good examples. Is technology good or is it bad? It depends upon the attitude of the user's heart. There is a cult of technology. Some of you have long suspected that geeks, they're kind of different and they're weird anyway. There is absolutely a cult of technology. Let me read you this quote from Pierce. An education obsessed with science, technology, engineering, and math, that's what we call STEM. An education obsessed with STEM to the exclusion or neglect of the humanities, stems, I guess that was a pun, the growth and development of the human person on the one hand, and unleashes technology without ethical constraints on the other. Only a fool would advocate such an education. There are plenty of fools that want to focus on science, technology, engineering, and math to the exclusion of all other things. I guess one of the reasons I'm so passionate about Concordia as a liberal arts school is we integrate that into a holistic set. Here's a quote from Albert Einstein. It is not enough that you should understand about applied science. Applied science, that's today what we call technology. It's not enough that you should understand technology in order that your work may increase man's blessing. That was an interesting assumption. Your work should increase man's blessing. Einstein goes on. Concern for man himself and his fate must always form the chief interest of all technical endeavors. Einstein said, it's not enough to teach a man especially, though he may become a kind of useful machine, but not a harmoniously developed personality. It was essential, Einstein said, that a student acquire an understanding of and a lively feeling for values. Specifically, he must acquire a vivid sense of the beautiful and the morally good. In the absence of such a well-balanced education, a student, possessing nothing but his limited specialized knowledge, more closely resembles a well-trained dog than a harmoniously developed person. We don't need a cult of technology. What we need is technology with a soul. Shameless plug, this is the service mark of the IT program here at Concordia University Wisconsin. We brand ourselves as the technology program with a soul. We incorporate a Lutheran Christian worldview into what technology is and what it does. This knowledge of the good infuses what we do with technology. Without that understanding of the good, the person of Christ, and the triune God, how can your technology really be a blessing for other people? Let me give you an example of the importance of ethics from a Christian worldview in technology. This looks like a really old person. This is Wilhelm Schickard. Wilhelm Schickard was a Lutheran pastor and professor at the University of Tübingen in Germany. Wilhelm Schickard founded computer science 400 years ago. He created the world's first mechanical calculator. Now, this is not a computer, not by a long shot. But this embodies all the ideas of computer science, the grand ideas, algorithms, abstraction, automation, and all those things you don't want me to talk about today. Why was it a Lutheran who created the world's first mechanical calculator? And more importantly, why haven't you heard of this? And why was it a Lutheran with a Christian worldview who really founded the discipline of computer science, which creates technology today? It had to do with his fundamental understanding. Schickard thought about the idea of human beings being created in God's image. And more importantly, he thought about how could I serve my fellow man? How could I create tools for the betterment of mankind? And as a matter of fact, Schickard's tool was the primary thing that was used by the Lutheran astronomer Kepler when Kepler actually put the heliocentric model on solid mathematical footing. Yeah, ethics, is that important? You bet it is. So let's fast forward 400 years from the founding origins of computer science and technology to what's happening today in the second decade of the 21st century. Scary artificial intelligence. AI is scary. Or is it? Well, if you believe Dr. Stephen Hawking, some people hold up Dr. Hawking as a brilliant scientist. I would tell you his worldview is wrong. Can somebody with a bad worldview be a brilliant scientist? Interesting question. Stephen Hawking says the development of AI could spell the end of the human race. He, along with many other people, are very concerned about artificial intelligence. Let's take a look at artificial intelligence. Oh, by the way, this is a pretty recent report, February 2018, a report by a number of scientists who know things about this. Authored by over 24 experts on the implications of emerging technology, is sounding alarm bells on the way artificial intelligence could enable new forms of cybercrime, physical attacks, and political disruption over the next decade. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But is it AI, or is it how people are using AI? To understand technology, and especially artificial intelligence, we need to, first of all, investigate what AI is, because people have different definitions and there are different understandings and there are actually different kinds of artificial intelligence. One type of AI is called weak AI. This has nothing to do with the physical powers of the researchers, but it has to do with their goal or objective. The goal of weak AI is to simulate intelligent behavior in specific areas. This is real. This is real stuff. Weak AI has existed for decades. As a matter of fact, if you do a survey of folks and ask them, are computers intelligent? Many people will say, yeah, they are. What are some examples? Many people call the fruits of weak AI expert systems. Here's one example. This is a medical diagnostic system. If you look carefully, you could probably tell it's not a real doctor, right? That's a computer-generated thing. And although I stole this issue from what would really be more of a toy because it was an Android app rather than a real tool, expert systems that assist medical professionals in diagnostic tasks really exist. And we have discovered that these tools, these expert systems, are indeed more expert more of the time in diagnosing illnesses than human doctors. Notice what we have done. We've simulated the expertise of a human doctor. That's a limited or narrow area. Weak AI? Yeah, that sounds good. Another example of weak AI, autonomous vehicles, self-driving cars. Now, as someone who enjoys driving, that's what my wife and I do for pleasure, I do not want a self-driving car. If you want one, that's fine. Please just stay out of my way. Self-driving cars, yeah. You probably, the newest automobile that I own is 6 years old. It has some of these features, like it knows if you get out of your lane, and it has a little radar on the side. You may have a car that has a lot of autonomous features. It has adaptive cruise control and lane holding types of things. So you see the person here, hands off the wheel, the car is turning, etc. Expert system, weak AI, artificial intelligence, you bet. this sounds like good stuff. One thing I should legitimately mention, though, is oftentimes, even with the best intentions of technology, there are unintended consequences. The computer has probably been the greatest example of unintended consequences of any technology of all time. Now, if you're an old person like me, sorry, young folk, this won't make any sense to you. Back in the days when email was a new thing, people said, "This is great! I can communicate instantaneously with somebody else halfway around the planet. And I don't have to pay the United States Postal Service, and it won't take 8 days for the letter to get here. I can communicate instantly." That was a good thing, right? And then came spam and hoaxes and phishing and the nightmare of trying to deal with managing all your email. Today, just on my work account, I counted them. I had 121 email messages, many of which demanded an immediate response. Guess what? I ignored it all. I'm here with you tonight. Unintended consequences are something to keep in mind also. Now, there's another form, there's another flavor of AI. That is what I and many other researchers call strong AI. The objective of strong AI research is twofold. Create thinking machines via human equivalence. This is strong AI. Don't confuse it with weak. I mean, we can both legitimately call them artificial intelligence, but they are very different. Let me divide up that objective into two parts and talk about each one in turn. The objective, create thinking machines. We just call them intelligent computers or intelligent machines. Intelligent computers, is that possible? You may recall about, I don't know, this is a long time ago, right? Half a decade ago or so. The television game show Jeopardy brought two of the best human Jeopardy players of all time. The one who won the most games, the one who won the most money, and pitted them against a computer, IBM's Watson, an intelligent machine. Who won? The machine. Ate him for lunch. Besides one nonsensical answer, Watson was dominant, to say the least. Can computers be intelligent? We don't have enough time. Come to one of my classes. We'll develop this a little more fully. I don't have time to fully develop it, but let me tell you one thing you need to keep in mind, and then let me tell you my gut feel. Number one, I can't answer that question unless you define for me what intelligence is. If the question is, can computers be intelligent? My question is, what do you mean by intelligence? If you can properly define that, then I can answer the question. But here is my gut reaction. My gut reaction is, yes, I believe computers can be intelligent. First of all, they already appear intelligent. They fooled more than half the population. And maybe there's not a big difference between appearing intelligent and truly being intelligent. But I don't think there's much standing in the way of intelligent computer systems. Now, don't freak out, because many people do. Listen very carefully. That's a very separate question from the second half of strong AI, which is human equivalence. There's more to being a human being than just being intelligent. You are intelligent, and so are many other life forms. My dog is really intelligent. My wife and daughter own horses. They can control them merely by wagging their finger and getting them to do things. They can communicate with them. They are intelligent. There's more to being human than just intelligence. Intelligent computers? No problem. Before we look at this second half, though, I need to share something with you. This is computer scientist Fred Brooks, who comes at the discipline of computer science from a Christian worldview perspective. In an article he wrote that basically argues that technology needs to be a tool for other people to use, I just need to read to you two quotes. Number one, the gift of subcreation. A little reflection shows us that the power to make things in imitation of our Maker is a gift for our sake. As he scornfully reminded the people of Israel, he doesn't need our creative powers. Psalm 50. The cattle on 1,000 hills are mine. If I were hungry, would I ask you? Declares God. So, Brooks continues, we must conclude that the ability and the call to create are given to us to enrich our lives and to enable us to enrich each other. Second quote. It is time to recognize that the original goals of artificial intelligence were not merely extremely difficult. They were goals that, although glamorous and motivating, sent the discipline off in the wrong direction. If indeed our objective is to build computer systems that solve very challenging problems, my thesis is IA is greater than AI. IA is intelligence amplifying. People using technology as tools. That is, the intelligence amplifying system can, at any given level of available system technology, be an AI system. Or to put another way, a mind plus a machine can beat a machine any day. I think what Dr. Brooks and I and many other people are saying is really what Jesus said 2,000 years ago. But what comes out of the mouth proceeds from the heart. And this defiles a person, for out of the heart come evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false witness, slander. These are what defile a person. Let's look at this second aspect of strong AI. Create thinking machines via human equivalence. Will you live on in the mind of a computer? Will you join with transhumanism? Will somehow human beings and technology be assimilated? Will human beings be computer systems? Will computer systems be human equivalent? The answer is no. The answer is no. Human beings were created in God's image. We possess a soul or a spirit. Let me flesh this out a little more. There's an article that I found some time ago that I reference often. It was an article produced before a number of you were born, 1987. It was one of the first popular level accounts I can find in the popular press of strong AI research. The news article, circa 1987, was entitled, "Will You Live On in the Mind of a Computer?" And it focused on the work of a number of computer scientists in strong AI research. Let me read you a couple snippets from this article that is more than 30 years old. If you can survive beyond the next 50 years or so, you may not have to die at all. At least, not entirely. That is one vision of the future being fashioned on the frontiers of robotics and AI research, where many of the nation's experts are now talking in terms once reserved for the wildest science fiction. When I shared this article with classes circa 1990, yeah, I've been here for 30 years, people laughed out loud. Nobody laughs today. That is one, okay, sorry. Hans Moravec, director of the Mobile Robot Laboratory at Carnegie Mellon University, believes that computer technology is advancing so swiftly there's little we can do to avoid a future world run by super-intelligent robots, unless, he says, we become them ourselves. In an astonishingly short amount of time, scientists will be able to transfer the contents of a person's mind into a powerful computer, and in the process make him, or at least his living essence, virtually immortal, Moravec claims. The things we are building are our children, the next generation. They're carrying on all our abilities, only they're doing it better. If you look at it that way, it's not so devastating. What's the ultimate purpose and goal of strong AI research? Eternal life. Make no mistake about it. Read anybody you want to. The reason that strong AI researchers are doing strong AI is so they can download themselves into a machine and live forever. This is the whole concept of transhumanism. Let me give you the concise definition of transhumanism. Simply put, it's the broad intellectual movement that advocates for the transformation of humanity through technology. Did you know that there is the Church of Artificial Intelligence, officially sanctioned and recognized as a 501c3 in the state of California? The Church of Artificial Technology. The Church of Artificial Intelligence. They call themselves WOTF, Way of the Future. Way of the Future's activities will focus on, direct quote from their material, the realization, acceptance, and worship of a Godhead based on artificial intelligence, developed through computer hardware and software. Who determines what's right and what's wrong? Who supplies the ethical foundation for the development of everything, including technology? Well, from a humanistic perspective, human beings are going to determine and decide those things. Who decides what's right and wrong? I won't read you this entire quote from Tristan Harris and a few others who at one time were Google Corporation ethicists. Technology feels disempowering because we haven't built it around upon an honest view of human nature. You're right, they don't have an honest view of human nature, and they're not going to come to an honest view of human nature also. Technology is designed to be addictive. Technology is designed to bring out the worst in people. Who's going to decide? I don't want that to be a Google ethicist. The only possible standard, of course, as we recognize, has to be God's Word. If I start determining what's right and wrong, Bonhoeffer said, in the beginning, we knew only one, God. I pointed out Dr. Fred Brooks. Dr. Fred Brooks is such a highly respected computer scientist. He's the only one I know who's been able to include biblical quotes in papers he's written for professional journals. They wouldn't accept mine. They won't accept yours. But Fred Brooks did. Fred Brooks has mentioned Philippians 4:8 often. You know what it is. As a standard for thinking about technology. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. What can we as Lutherans bring to the table? Fundamentally, one idea is the idea of vocation. I'll be careful not to call it Luther's idea. I think Dr. Lane's going to talk about that a little bit. This was actually God's idea, rediscovered by Martin Luther, and Lutherans understand this well. Vocation is loving and serving your neighbor. As Luther put it, it's wearing God's mask so that our neighbor sees God's love through what we do. We don't serve God. Vocation is not serving God. God doesn't need us. Vocation is serving our neighbor. Our technology needs to be created to love and serve our neighbor. Hopefully, if you've sat in a computer science course of mine, we've talked about truth and beauty and goodness and community. How do we love our neighbor in technology? We create an information technology tool that is true. It accurately solves the problem. That is beautiful. It is put together such that both users and other computer scientists can understand it. It has aesthetic qualities. It not only works, but it works well. That is, it is good. And finally, the user experience builds community. Vocation is the fulfillment of the law. God's law is a single word, love. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. These are the two greatest commandments. Vocation is the fulfillment of the law, and as a technologist, it's how we love our neighbor. So, what is a message that we could give to a technology-infused world, to human beings that are immersed in technology? It's a simple message. Eternal life is already freely available. Thank God it does not depend upon a bug-ridden AI system. Download 34721. Oops, didn't work. Sorry. Next. Eternal life is already freely available. Imagine that message. Much of the world is seeking desperately eternal life in the context of transhumanism, strong AI. We've got a great message. It's already freely available. Let me end up with maybe a practical application of this. If the question is, okay, technology, yeah, you know, I recognize I'm involved with it too much. Technology has taken over my life. What do? Do I go cold turkey and get rid of it? No, I don't think so. That's kind of hard to do. But it's certainly okay to back off. Here's the problem. Many people say, okay, I recognize I got this bad habit. I'm going to back off from it. What are you going to fill it with? When the unclean spirit has gone out of a person, it passes through waterless place, seeking rest, but finds none. Then it says, I will return to my house from which I came. And when it comes, it finds the house empty, swept clean and put in order. Then it goes and brings with it 7 other spirits more evil than itself, and they enter and dwell there. And the last state of that person is worse than the first. If you want to give up something, if you want to give up your tech addiction, and by the way, a lot of technology is good. You don't have to give it all up. Fill it with something. May I suggest that that's service? Service to other people? Yeah, good. Folks, I appreciate your rapt attention. This is the time we're supposed to be done. I usually time it that way so I don't have to answer any questions. But if you had a question, not that I know the answers to these things, I'd be happy to listen to them.
We have 5 minutes. Actually.
5 minutes? Oh, really?
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Voss.
8:20.
Okay, good.
I have a question.
Okay, question. Thank you.
Do you think that the bad use of technology is correlated to the rise in school shootings?
Ooh. Wow. I mean, that's a great question. Do I think that technology use is correlated to the rise of school shootings? Honestly, I don't know the answer to that question. I have an opinion. Don't think we'll go there. You would... So hard to do the correlation. Very hard to do the correlation. We have lots of anecdotal evidence of person A interviewed said, you know, hey, I've spent lots of hours playing non-wholesome video games and I acted upon those impulses. You would think that there is an unfortunate causal effect between, yeah, the increase in all kinds of things, including school violence, and the use of technology. Great question. I have to think about that. Other questions? How about a softball one? Thank you, Gabriel.
Are there like any considerable differences between medieval alchemy and strong AI?
Yeah, great question. If you think artificial intelligence is not a new thing, think about Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I mean, that was animating an object, right? Obviously bringing it back to life. Any difference between, well, probably in the sense that the wrong-headed strong AI and some wrong-headed alchemy both share strong roots. Yeah. Do I think there's a connection there somehow? Sure. Keep going, or is that helpful? Good. Did you all have candy? Thank you, Dr. Fox.
Did you hear that, I think it was about a month ago, Saudi Arabia granted citizenship to a robot?
Yeah.
But they won't do that for Christians. They won't grant citizenship to Christians.
That's a great comment. So Saudi Arabia granting citizenship to a robot, but certainly not to Christians. Yeah, I mean, we're going to be, there are so many ethical issues that are going to come up. You know, personhood for robots, and dare you turn off your personal digital assistant? If you're turning off Siri, are you shutting? Yeah, wow. It's not going to get easier, but I think that a Christian worldview will help us to navigate those waters. Great. Uh-oh, here comes the hardball one. Yes, Dr. Elkin.
Well, I know you could go on with this, but what human qualities do you think or abilities have been lost in or with our use of technology?
Yeah. The question is, what human abilities, skills have been lost because of technology? I mean, there are obvious ones. Nobody could estimate. Nobody does computation or calculation anymore. But one thing that I've thought about a little bit that I'd like to more fully develop is, has our sense of imagination and wonder really been diminished by the capability of computer systems? Seems counterintuitive. You can create a virtual world today. You can get immersed in technology. How could that somehow diminish the human imagination? I think it does. Didn't answer the question, but, oh, look at the time. Okay, good. Folks, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your rapt attention. Enjoy the rest of the conference.